Welcome to A Wash with Colour from Roundstone in County Galway. This is one of the oldest and most picturesque fishing villages in the west of Ireland, attracting photographers, artists and filmmakers for many years. Later, I'll be doing some painting with my guest, broadcaster and writer Dick Warner, who's no stranger to this harbour. Connemara has a vibrant maritime heritage, stretching back for hundreds of years. And the past is alive and well. These traditional fishing boats, called hookers, are still in daily use. Roundstone, nestling on the western edge of Bertraboy Bay, was built in the 1820s by the Scottish engineer Alexander Nimmo. Rising above the harbour, the village consists of a single main street of tall houses, shops, pubs and restaurants. My guest today is a man who knows this coastline well, and indeed every square inch of water in and around Ireland. Writer, broadcaster and voyager, Dick Warner. Well, I can't think of a better place to meet Dick than a bar in Roundstone.
Yeah, and this is the nearest bar to the harbour, and last time I was here I arrived by boat, so obviously it's the first place I came to.
Well, I know you're no stranger to this area, Dick. You've worked quite a lot around here, so tell me a bit about the projects that you've worked on.
Well, the project that brought me here by boat was a television series going in a sailing boat all the way round the coast of Ireland, total circumnavigation in 18 programmes called Voyage.
This exercise is a nautical nightmare, but a scenic dream. We're heading straight for the 12 Bends. It's like sailing through a Paul Henry painting.
The South Connemara coast, the coast around here, was certainly one of the high points of that trip because it's an amazing coastline. It's not like the coast of any other part of the country because normally speaking, when the sea meets the land, you've got a fairly hard edge. But in South Connemara, it's much more complicated than that. There's little fingers of land coming into the sea and little fingers of sea going into the land and little lagoons and islands and rocks, and it's very, very interesting. It's also rich in wildlife and marine life. It's quite shallow offshore. Where it's shallower and the light can penetrate, you get a lot more life.
I know originally your passion was for writing, but when did you decide that you wanted to be a writer?
I think I'm correct in saying that I decided I wanted to be a writer when I grew up, when I was 8 years old. And when I grow up, I'm going to be one. But, when I was a kid, I used to read an awful lot. And I think I got a love of words from reading, first of all. And I was a complete bookworm. I always had my head in a book. Although I don't read as much these days, I still do read, but not as much as I did when I was a kid. I still have this passion for words. I love words. I love playing with words. Words are they're really my paintbrush and paints. I love the business of writing words to fit with pictures because it's a very, very tight discipline. You have got a certain number of ideas that you have to express, and you might have 7 or 8 seconds to do it in, and you can't do it in 10 seconds and you can't do it in 5 seconds, and that takes a lot of discipline. And if you like the craft of writing, then the challenges posed by writing for television are huge. They're great. Not all the work I do is television work. I worked for over 20 years in radio as a producer and to a certain extent as a presenter, and then I got this notion that I wanted to make a documentary about the canal because I loved the Grand Canal, and that actually grew into 24 programs about the inland waterways.
The power of nature is very evident. We're being sucked up by the waterway, pushed along by a peristaltic spasm in the gut of the canal. This is a trip in every sense of the word.
I've done a number of television programs about trees, and I also do print journalism and write for magazines and stuff like that, mostly about wildlife and the environment.
And have you always had an interest in the environment, Dick?
Well, it started off specifically as an interest in wildlife, in birds and animals, and later on in plants. But if you're interested in wildlife, It's an almost a natural progression to become interested and concerned about environmental issues, because in the course of my lifetime I've seen wildlife diminish in this country and in other countries, but in this country that I love so much. And I was talking about the sea around the coast here. The same thing is true, the quality of the seawater and the fact that there's been overfishing, certain amount of pollution, the growth of fish farms and so on, has reduced the amount of marine life off the coast. So you become concerned about environmental issues, and you can even become passionate about them, because you see the thing that you love, which in my case is the countryside and the wildlife, just deteriorating.
What's next for Dick Warner, and what are your ambitions for the future?
One project that I hope is going to happen in the near future, which is fairly relevant to where we are now, is that I'm hoping to do a television series on the great pubs of Ireland, a labour of love.
Well, what about painting or collecting paintings, Dick? Have you any interest in that?
Actively painting is something I haven't done since I was a kid, really. But paintings, yes. I do have an interest in paintings. I buy paintings occasionally, normally watercolours by contemporary artists. I can't afford very expensive ones, but sometimes I get given paintings, because one of the things I do from time to time is I open exhibitions for artists. Most artists aren't like you. They're actually very poor. They have no money. Now, I know you're very rich. But so instead of giving you money for opening their exhibition, they give you one of their paintings. So I get a lot of paintings that way. And I hang them around my house. Most of them I enjoy very much. So I have an interest from the consumer's point of view, if you like, rather than the producer's point of view.
As you'd imagine, Roundstone is a magnet for tourists all year round. Out here, a little local knowledge goes a long way, especially when it comes to venturing off the beaten track. This has got to be one of the best kept secrets in Connemara. The little town land of Airvala, west of Roundstone, is not something you'll find on the average map. It's this peaceful beauty that enticed famous Irish artists such as Paul Henry, Maurice McGonigal and Jack B. Yeats to the area. Connemara is a very peaceful place. Out here on the back roads, the loudest thing you'll hear is the odd cuckoo. One of the reasons Connemara has been designated a national park is this blanket bog, one of the rarest and most endangered habitats in Europe. For a quiet and remote spot, Connemara has something of a global reputation. This is Derry Grimla Bog, where Alcock and Brown touched down in 1919 after the first transatlantic flight. Captain John Alcock and Lieutenant Arthur Brown set off from St John's, Newfoundland on the 14th of June. After 16 hours of bog, snow and engine failure, their Vickers Vimy Rolls biplane buried its nose in this bogland. Sadly, Alcock died in a plane crash the following December, but he and Brown had already made history. Near the original landing site, a monument celebrates both aviators and their extraordinary 1,900-mile flight. This Tramore, or Great Beach at Gurteen Bay, is a magnificent stretch of white sand, and one of the many along the west coast. You can really appreciate the sense of space and isolation, which is one of the real attractions of Connemara. Malachy Kearns is a Roundstone-based traditional instrument maker. He specialises in the bodhrán, or handheld drum, and his work includes the stage drums used in river dance. Malachy, over the years I've heard a lot of people referring to that drum as a bodhrán, a bodhrán and a bodhrán. It is bodhrán though. Where does the word come from?
Well, the word bodhrán means death or from deep within, because the sound of it when it's played with a skilled player, it has a very deep haunting sound, and it tends to go straight into the gut. where the life centre is, it's a very quickly felt experience. Like sometimes we experience things through our head and our heart and then our gut. But I often see people at big concert, a player like Christy Moore might pick up the bower in the middle of the concert, and then within 4 seconds everybody's listening. It's because they feel the experience of it all, the deep haunting sound, so quickly, you know. It's nice to hear people silent and listening.
Where does the baron come from? Is it an old instrument?
Yeah, like every country has its frame drum, whether it's the South American countries, the African countries, or the Middle Eastern countries, whatever, you know. But the bodhrán is unique to Ireland. It's the type of goat skin we use. It's very tough goat skin with a beautiful bounce back, and it creates its own energy when you're playing, hitting it with the stick or beater, or kippeen we call it. It means little stick in Irish. The way it's played is a magnificent playing technique in the world of manual percussion. Both hands are used, one behind the skin and one for playing with the beater. And it's kind of like a yin and yang kind of scenario. If you get that energy right, it's a beautiful racing sounds. And whereas most other drumming is maybe like marching drums or like whatever, and both hands are not used synchronised together. And it's a very clever playing technique. Yeah. It's like potatoes without salt, you know. Same with the bodhrán in Irish music. It's an accompaniment to Irish music, but it's beautiful when it's in the hands of a skilled player. It's magnificent.
When did you first have the interest in making them?
Well, I always loved the sound, but it got me in the gut, the sound of the bodhrán, when I was a kid in Sligo. You know, my aunt's pub was always there in the summers. Then I had a neighbour who was a harp maker, and he asked me to help him selling a few harps, and we grew into it from there, the idea of making instruments. But I always loved the bodhrán, the sound of it, the feel of it, the people that play it. There tend to be very free-spirited people. The music, the atmosphere, the gusto that's around all that power, the beautiful sound. And it just took me along like the waves, you know.
Yeah. Take me through the process of making a bodhrán from start to finish.
Well, the traditional size of the rim was 18 inches diameter, 14 inches deep. And it's solid beech wood and usually 10 millimetre thick. And we steam and bend it. And then we dehair and deflesh the skin in a gentle way. With
Is
very
that
little
goat skin?
Goat skin is, yeah. Irish goat skin is unique in its stretch properties. And years ago, we used to bury the skins in manure. The acidic content of manure helped to dehair and deflesh the skin. We still do that sometimes. Or we do it in barrels as well now, a simpler process. But it's very important not to overdo the chemical aspect. It'll ruin the skin. It'll look good, but it won't sound good.
Well, tell me about the designs, particularly like the Celtic designs. What is the whole meaning behind that?
Yeah, well, Celtic designs the lines have no beginning or end. They continue, and they tend to depict man's eternal spiritual journey as we weave our way along and go up and down and grow. And they sort of bring attention to things eternal, like love and forgiveness. Everybody has their own meaning after that, maybe deeper.
What type of paint are you using then to paint the designs on?
So we use mainly leather dyes, waterproof leather dyes, or acrylics sometimes as well, and it's all hand painted. Right. And some people like family crests or Celtic initials or whatever. We do what we're told.
What parts of the world are they going to?
Well, Ireland, we sell a lot, of course, to people and people visiting Ireland, but England and France and Germany, the States, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, even Guam down in the Pacific Ocean. We sell quite a lot down there. There's an American air base down there, an expert teacher. I love the feel of a bodhrán when it's finished, when it's made, and testing it. And I've brought it to a new life, you know. God knows where it's going, but somewhere good.
Myself and Dick have returned to the coast for today's painting. A very fitting scene, given the area and the man behind the paintbrush. Well, Dick, what do you think of the scene?
Well, it's very pretty, I have to say. Nice old half-decker there, painted in very traditional blue and white colours.
What would a boat like that have been used for?
Would have been used perhaps for lobster potting. You see, there's a big open sort of hold at the back which you could put a lot of lobster pots in, or for doing something like salmon netting or something like that. It's suitable for that. Inshore fishing.
Yeah, yeah. And would that be a very old boat?
I would say that boat is probably 60 or 70 years old, to judge by the shape and lines of it.
I love the little cabin, you know, the way it's so narrow in comparison to the width of the boat.
That's a little wheelhouse where they, rather than a cabin, they call it, where they steer the boat from and get a bit of protection from the weather. But it's kept small to give the maximum amount of working space at the back of the boat.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I suppose we better get a sketch down anyway, Dick.
Oh, that's the bit I'm not looking. Couldn't we just take a photograph?
No, it wouldn't have the same character.
Okay.
Right, well, we need to start here with this bit at the front. Now, I know that's the bow of the boat, but what do you call that stick that comes down there?
That's the stem post, that piece of timber that's coming down at the front of the boat, at the bow of the boat. You've got me talking in non-nautical language now.
From there, we'll be coming down like this, generally in that direction there.
That's called the shear line of the boat.
The shear line?
Yes, you see it's a lovely curve.
Yeah. And then you see the way you can see the back side of it as well. What?
Back side. That's the transom.
The transom, right.
I think at the end of today you'll know a bit more about boats and I'll know a bit more about printing.
Exactly. Well, I must say that just about does it, Dick.
I'm very impressed. Looks very good.
Yeah, indeed. You see, it's a beautiful composition because it's a simple subject, but at the same time there's enough going on there to make it an interesting painting. The sky is going to be a very dilute wash, and we're using 3 washes. One is raw sienna and water, the other is crimson and ultramarine, and the third one is ultramarine and cerulean blue.
All those names meant absolutely nothing to me.
I know, funny enough, I find them very confusing myself. Why don't they just call them, simple colours like...
Give them numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
Why, when we're starting on the sky, are we starting with a sort of browny colour?
Well, it's a very warm colour, and I want to give a feeling of warmth in the sky. So that's raw sienna. It's a yellowish colour. So here you go, put some more of that on. You'll never have that sort of yellowish colour towards the top. It's more towards the bottom of the sky.
Towards the horizon?
Yeah, the horizon.
Okay.
You see, in my world, skies have tops, bottoms, right-hand corners and left-hand corners because we have to fit it into a rectangular page.
But I would never have thought of starting with this colour on the sky.
Yeah, but you see, we're going to blend a lot of colours into that. Now, we need cooler colours now, and this is crimson and ultramarine. And you see, if you just put that in, like, push.
Also looks very surrealistic.
Yeah, push it in and put it on the underside of those clouds.
These are clouds?
Just over here, yeah.
So something
now,
like that?
Watch, do you see? Look. Pull it down. I'm just going to guide your hand through. Pull it down and then push it up like that.
So you're sort of pushing it into the texture of the paper?
That's right, yes. Now, we better work quickly into the blue this time. And this is where we're going to have some blue sky, more or less coming in from the top and coming down to blend with the other colours that we have there. There you go. Very important that you come across that top line first and then bring it down, forming the shape of the clouds.
The paint's very watery, isn't it?
It is. It's a very weak wash, a very dilute wash. Now start very softly along the top to get that filled, and then you can pull down and go back up again.
It just doesn't look like a very good weather forecast.
We need to watch this big blob over on the...
Oh yeah, I'm going to let you deal with that. It looks like an emergency.
Just squeezing the brush between finger and thumb and vacuum it up like that.
Oh.
Simple. Just take the excess paint off and do the same there, but don't go over the boat either.
Okay.
If we lose the white of the boat, you see the cabin has the wheelhouse, sorry, is a beautiful white, and if we lose that white we can't get it back again. But you see how the sky has lightened quite a lot, Dick, as it dried?
Yeah, I was surprised at that. It looks better now than when we first did it.
It does. And you have to always bear in mind that the washes have to be stronger because they're going to dry lighter. So if you put them on too weak to begin with, whenever it dries, they disappear altogether.
Okay.
But we'll put the water in now, and this is a mixture of cerulean blue with a bit of Windsor yellow and a tiny wee bit of neutral tint into it as well. And it's to give that sort of greeny blue colour.
One of the things you notice about the sea, particularly around here in South Connemara, is there's a lot of variation in the colour, depending on whether it's sand or rock or weed and how deep or how shallow it is. It's not just one colour.
No, there's a lot of varying tones there.
Yeah.
And we're going to do that. We're going to put on this colour first, and then we'll put a darker shade over the top of that. So you have to be careful here to cut neatly along those lines. When you're in the water area, it's okay, but whenever you're working around the boat, it's particularly... You have to be particularly careful there.
This is where I could make a mess of it.
Well, we'll have a go anyway. So, bring that across, that's it. Cutting nice and neatly along that line. I'll mix this other colour, which is cerulean blue, with a little bit of neutral tint. Now you see if I pull that through, look.
Ah, now it's beginning to look a bit like the real thing.
Yeah, you can give depth to the water. Well, that's enough detail for the background hills.
Yeah, when you look at those hills over there, They're not the colour you'd think they'd be. You wouldn't think they were blue hills, but it works when you actually paint them blue.
You know, it's like looking into the distance, you're looking through the atmosphere, and the particles of dust and moisture in the atmosphere are diffusing the true colour. So the further something gets away from us, the bluer it seems to get. Now, that brings us right up to the foreground, Dick. We don't have any bluing here at all, but we have a mass of different colours of greens.
40 shades of green.
40 shades of green is right. So we're starting with the lightest. In watercolour, we're always working from light to dark. So using the number 8 brush and a mixture of Windsor yellow with a tiny bit of Windsor blue, we want to put in some of this green. Now again, we have to be pretty quick here. And if you look out there, there are a few ropes coming from the boat down to the foreground.
Different coloured ropes.
Yeah. Now if we paint the ropes green at this stage, then we can't get the colour back. So I'm just cutting up along the edge of that pencil line and then blocking that area in. So just be careful whenever you're coming up there. You just have to leave that area white for the rope. So
Okay.
using that there, very quickly, fill down to the edge of the rock.
Down to somewhere around here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, we must cut the green colour around the shape of the rock.
Okay.
Now while you're working away on that, I'll mix a darker version of the green. And it's Windsor yellow with Windsor blue and a little bit of light red. And you put that through like that, like.
But not covering this time.
No, we want to leave light green and dark green.
I see what you're doing.
Try that, just setting it in. Because the underlying wash is wet, it'll bleed through it. How are you finding that yourself?
It's very interesting because it's not what I expected. The techniques are quite different to what I expected, particularly the use of colour.
Yeah.
Is there enough there now?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll continue here with this one.
And I can follow you up with this
yeah,
one.
that'll do.
Okay.
We could start a production line.
Yeah. It's a sort of painting duet.
Well, that brings us to the boat now. You can see that the two-tone effect has worked very well there to give us that varying shades of green.
Yeah, it's very realistic.
And the boat, you see, is a very pale pastely blue. So we can't make it too dark to begin with, otherwise it's going to clash with the sea. And we must cut around the white bars. What would you call those there?
They're rubbing strakes. They're to stop the boat rubbing against a harbour wall or something. It's sacrificial pieces of timber.
Yes, I'm learning so much about this, you know.
It's mutual.
Now, I just want you to take that very pale...
You've got the colour spot on.
Well, it's very close, isn't it? It's cerulean blue and water, really. So there you go. Be very careful and just put that underlying wash on over the boat first of all. Be careful to keep those white rubbing
strakes.
Rubbing streaks.
Okay, I'll try and keep them white.
Yeah.
Mind you, the real boat out there needs a bit of repainting itself.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do that when we finish.
If we have time, we'll have a go at it.
Am I doing okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Now, you see, if you leave some little white bits, it's like flaking paint.
Which it has plenty of. These are quite traditional colours for boats to be painted in the west of Ireland, and in some ways it's a bit illogical because they are very much the colours of the sea, and we'd think that people would want boats that stood out a bit more in case of emergencies or needing to be rescued or something like that.
Yeah. I often wondered about that, you know, why in some areas you'll have a lot of red boats, in other areas you'll have a lot of blue boats, and then sometimes you have green boats.
It probably depends on what the local hardware store has most of. But this is very traditional, and I think that there may be a bit more to it than that. I think these are the Marian colours, the colours of the Virgin Mary, and I think that brought luck.
While we're waiting on that to dry, we'll just put in that window. So that's ultramarine and light red. You see, if you show the glass as a dark colour, it stands out more.
That's something else that wouldn't have occurred to me.
Yeah. Now, there's a frame there, so we want to put that like that and just paint very tidily around the frame. So you have a bit in there and a bit on that side.
Okay.
That's fine. Don't
I put a tiny bit at the front here?
Yeah, just there. Fill out that square, but keep it very tidy, otherwise it'll not look like a window.
Well, you keep the board quite horizontal. I suppose that's to stop drips and runs
yeah,
and so
well,
on.
the ideal way to paint is to have the board at about 15 degrees from the horizontal.
I see.
You have a slight run on the wash as you put it on, but it's not running fast enough to run off the end of the paper.
Because I somehow assumed that it would be almost vertical on the easel before we started.
Well, if you did that and you had a very loose wash, as soon as you put it on the paper, it finishes up on the ground.
I see, yeah.
Right, well, we're waiting on the boat to dry. You can come down and do some work on the rocks.
There's a lot of different colours in those rocks. How are we going to manage that?
Right, well, we'll start with 3 different washes. We have raw sienna and water, first of all. And that's just a very pale, dilute wash, and we'll do 1 stone at a time. just one rock at a time. I'll do this one and then you can take over and do another one beside it. So that's raw sienna and water, and then into that, just take a wee bit of the wash off that. Into that I'm going to put some light red and water, only this is slightly thicker in texture. And you see, if you just push that up in, it'll bleed through the rock and just give you that reddish tone. And then the third one is burnt sienna and neutral tint. So here you go, Dick.
Have a go.
Have a go.
I think that's enough, isn't it?
Now, you see the way you daubed at that?
Yeah.
You're better to sometimes just put it in, you know, with a nice
Stroke.
instead of a daub, because you can't control it if you daub it.
Okay.
I'll load the other brush for you.
Thank you.
The choreography is very good.
Yes, we're working like a team here. Does the speed at which the paint dries vary according to how much water you put with it?
It does indeed. It also varies depending on what type of day it is. Keep that more to the left hand side. That's it. If you have a damp air, the paint is going to dry a lot slower. If you have a nice warm sunny day and a dry air, it's going to dry a lot quicker.
But it's fairly humid today, so that gives us a few extra seconds.
It does.
Yeah. This boat has very narrow side decks, and if it's rolling in the sea and you need to get onto the foredeck, you need to hold on to something. So it's got grab rails along the top of the wheelhouse here, like something like this.
I often wondered what those were, Dick. You know, I just thought there was decoration on the top.
Okay. Can you imagine if you're trying to move up that side deck and the boat's rolling like that? You need something to hold on to. So they're just little handholds.
What's that thing there now? It's like a pulley for pulling up nets or something.
Yeah, it's either a pot hauler or a net hauler. If this boat was being used for lobster potting, it hauls up a string of pots. It's a winch, basically.
Yeah.
I think we're very nearly finished here, aren't we?
Yeah, well, you see, it is possible, Dick, to overcook it. You know, and I think it pleases me the way it is. If it pleases you, I'm happy enough.
I like that. Yeah, I think we should say done.
Fair enough. Well, that's Roundstone Pier. Do you think would this have been the original pier, Dick, in the town?
Yeah, there's a newer harbour up in the village, but this I think probably predates it and been around for a couple of 100 years, I'd say.
Well, I must say it's a very nice place anyway.
It's lovely.
Dick, there's nothing left to do now, only sign it.
Sign it.
Yep.
I think I'm doing this slightly under false pretenses. But here we go.
Well done.
Thank you.
Good luck. More from Connemara next week on A Wash with Colour, when my guest will be Paul Hendy from the television series Don't Try This at Home. But for now, it's goodbye from Roundstone and West Galway. For further information or fact sheets on A Wash with Colour, turn to CFAX page 628.